Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to discuss the types or some types that value INFJs despite the fact that there's a but at the end of the sentence. In other words, that these types are frustrated by INFJs in some ways, and yet they cannot help but value them in other ways, because INFJs bring something that these types feel like maybe they lack or could have more of, and the fact that they're in touch with INFJs is going to bring more of that, but it still won't take away from this sense of frustration, or sometimes it's not going to be frustration, but a feeling like, this is a shame, if only the INFJ was more like this or more like that, or less like this or less like that. I'm going to focus on the N types today, and perhaps in the future I will make a video where I discuss more the S types reactions in relation to INFJs and interactions with INFJs and so forth and so on. So what I would say is that a type that is very likely to value INFJs is ENFJs, and I think often because at a more or less unconscious level, ENFJs enjoy the depth that INFJs are willing to go into, that perhaps ENFJs don't allow themselves to go into as much. I'm not saying that they're not capable of it, but they don't allow themselves to. And for the same reason, the but that comes at the end of the sentence is that they often find INFJs to be a little bit too passive or indolent. ENFPs, on the other hand, I would say that they very much value INFJs for reasons that have been discussed many times before, including on my channel. They are very good complements to the ENFP mind. They have different kinds of creativity that can kind of merge together. They have different approaches to feeling. There's a sense that one side completes the other. But I think the ENFP is still going to experience some level of frustration at the privacy of INFJs, as at the inability of the INFJ to open up as quick as the ENFP would like them to open up. The ENTP, I think, values INFJs because they admire the depth of their thinking, that sometimes is more willing to be patient, to penetrate to the bottom of things, but will often be frustrated, I think, by what they would consider perhaps they would consider a lack of what would you call it? A lack of a will to go into conflict to defend your position. And we know that ENTPs consider, often a lot of ENTPs consider that you learn through debate, that you learn through conflict. Conflict doesn't have to be negative. So I'm not saying that they consider INFJs to be cowardly or pusillanimous, but they would still wish that the INFJ were willing to, put themselves out there more and be willing to spar more, make more use of their TI, for example. The INTP is kind of similar. I think that they enjoy the INFJ's ability to do something that NE is not as good at doing, is to perceive the crevices in a particular piece of reasoning, and to latch onto that and to show it for what it is, or to connect the dots in a way that cannot always be understood or is seen as a brilliant intuition. Whereas INTPs often need to build like castles until they reach this view, and they're kind of sometimes fascinated by the fact that the INFJ is able to get that view straight away, even though it's through a sense of vision. They are frustrated by what they consider somewhat similar to the ENTP, the sensitiveness of the INFJ. And what's interesting is that the INFP has a very different perspective. The INFP will appreciate the INFJ's sensitivity, but will consider that the INFJ often allows logic and rationality to prevail, and that they are kind of denying themselves in some way, at least from the point of view of the INFP's perspective. The INTJ, I don't think that INTJs they appreciate INFJs because they're aware of how similar they are. So they're brothers or sisters, or next of kin or something like that. But I think a lot of the time they consider maybe the INFJs to care too much about what other people think of them, right? To be too much into, not necessarily going so far as to say being people pleasers, but still caring very much how they're perceived and what people think of them, particularly morally, but not necessarily only morally. And this is something that INTJs don't care about as much. ENTJs, this is the last and interesting case. It strikes me that the ENTJ seems to be fascinated by the INFJ's sense of creativity and creative viewpoints, and it's often the case that the INFJ is kind of intimidated by the ENTJ and doesn't really understand why they are admired or a source of fascination for the ENTJ. But the lack of pragmatism of the INFJ is often a source of frustration for the ENTJ. And it can lead to arguments, it can lead to misunderstandings, it can lead to all sorts of things. But that's essentially how I perceive, the fact that a lot of N-types, they appreciate INFJs in a real way for X, Y, and Z reasons, while at the same time experiencing a certain sense of frustration, not always, but a lot of the time, for X, Y, and Z reasons that I try to cover in this video. So if you enjoyed my video, give me a like. Don't forget, I've written 2 books on the INFJ personality, The Infinite Soul, which is my latest book, which covers INFJ life in the modern world. How to find meaning, purpose, and value in a world that is often hostile to INFJs. So you can get that book at the links below. If you have the book and haven't reviewed it yet, remember that I really benefit from reviews for, in terms of referencing. So please consider dropping a review. In the prequel, The Ecstatic Soul, which is analysis of the INFJ mind, goes really in depth. And I have a Patreon page down below as well. If you would like to support my channel to keep it going into the future, please consider following me. You do get access to some bonus content. We do young readings there, and you can ask me any questions directly or make suggestions, because I always need new ideas. Okay guys, I'll talk to you soon. Take care, bye-bye.